British women led the struggle. It was only in the 20th century, after the death of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, that the feminist revolution successfully penetrated the Muslim world. The environmental pollution that is bringing about the climatic change that the Prophet ﷺ prophesied would occur at the time of Dajjal, the false Messiah. This is now taking place in the world, yet Mirza is long dead. The awesome deception of the modern age in which appearance and reality are so completely different from each other. The road to heaven having the appearance of the road to hell, and vice versa, is evidence that Dajjal is still at work. The Prophet ﷺ said that Dajjal would do precisely that. The liberation of the Holy Land from non-Jewishite Muslim rule, the return of the Jews to the Holy Land, and the establishment of the State of Israel were all accomplished with active involvement of a Christian island named Britain, which is located about 1 month's journey by sea from the Arabian Peninsula, exactly as mentioned in the Hadith of Tamim al-Dari. Also, they were all accomplished after the death of Mirza. It is likely that the State of Israel would soon displace USA as the ruling state in the world, and would then lay claim to the return of the golden age of Solomon alayhi al-salam. This has not as yet taken place, but when it does, it would represent further progress in Dajjal's mission of impersonating the Messiah. All of this would soon take place. Yet Mirza died almost a century ago. All of the above are the work of Dajjal, the false Messiah, who is still very much alive, yet Mirza is already dead. In fact, all of the above emerged fully in the world, and assumed a universal character long after the death of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. If Mirza killed Dajjal, the false Messiah, then how do the followers of Mirza explain all of the above? Perhaps the discerning followers of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad may now recognize the reality of the world today, and so recognize that the truth is different from the claims of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. Amin. Jerusalem in the Quran. By Imran N. Hossein. Part 1. Chapter 10. Gog and Magog in the Quran and Hadith. They said, O Dhul Qarnain, Gog and Magog people commit acts of corruption and wickedness in our land. Can we pay you a tribute payment in order that you might erect a barrier between us and them, so that we can be protected from them and their wickedness? Quran Al-Kahf 18-94. Our teacher of blessed memory, Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadler Rahman Ansari Ra, taught a very important lesson in connection with the pursuit of knowledge, particularly when it pertains to the knowledge of truth. He taught that the part of knowledge should never be studied apart from, or in isolation of, the whole to which it belongs. Secondly, he taught that the proper gathering of knowledge pertaining to a subject of study requires that it should also be organized as a whole. But such is not possible unless one locates the unitary principle that binds the parts together. He called that unitary principle the system of meaning. It is that system of meaning that must be discovered when we attempt to study the subject of Gog and Magog, Yaju and Maju. Unless this method of study is adopted, then the subject of Gog and Magog is such that even the greatest of scholars can be misled. The plain evidence that emerges from the Quran and from no less than 8 hadith of Sahih Bukhari indicates that the release of Gog and Magog occurred in the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, long before the return of Jesus alaihi al-salam. There are only 2 references to Gog and Magog, Yaju and Maju, in the Quran. Our first effort must therefore be to discover the principle of unity that links these 2 Quranic references to Gog and Magog. The first reference is in Surah Al-Kahf, and the second is in Surah Al-Anbiya. Here is the first reference. They said, O Dhul Qarnain, Gog and Magog commit facid corruption, awesome oppression, and wickedness in the land. May we render you tribute? Can we pay you something in order that you might erect a barrier between us and them, so that we can be protected from them? Quran Al-Kahf 18-94. The very first Quranic reference to Gog and Magog thus declares them to be essentially agents of facid The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained that Gog was a community of human beings who had descended from Adam alayhi al-salam. Similar was the case with Magog. The hadith complements the Quran to warn that Allah Most High endowed these human communities comprised of agents of fasid with such power that they are, by worldly standards, invincible. It will be under such conditions that Allah will reveal to Jesus these words: I have brought forth from among my servants such people against whom none will be able to fight. You take these people safely to Tur, and then Allah will send Gog and Magog, and they will swarm down from every slope or spread out in every direction. The first of them will pass the Lake Tiberias, i.e., the Sea of Galilee, also known as Lake Kinneret, and drink out of it. And when the last of them passes, he will say, there was once water here. Jesus and his companions will then be besieged here at Tur, and they will be so hard pressed that the head of the ox will be dearer to them than 100 dinars. Allah's apostle Jesus and his companions will supplicate Allah, who will send to them insects, which will attack their necks, and in the morning they would perish as one single person. Allah's apostle Jesus and his companions will then beseech Allah, who will send birds whose necks would be like those of Bactrian camels, and they will carry them away and throw them where Allah wills. Sahih Muslim. Surah Al-Kahf informs us that Dhul Qarnayn built a barrier between the people and these agents of fasid. He used blocks of iron and then sealed them with a coating of molten copper. He then declared of the barrier that it was Rahmah, an act of mercy from his Lord, but that Allah Most High would himself bring down the barrier and release Gog and Magog at that time when the warning of his Dhul Qarnayn's Lord was to come to pass. He said, this is a mercy from my Lord. But when the warning of my Lord concerning the last age comes to pass, he will make it into dust. And the promise of my Lord is true. Quran, Al-Kahf, 98. Which warning was he referring to? The answer is quite clearly revealed in the famous hadith, in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrated 10 major signs of the last day. Among the 10 was the release of Gog and Magog. Narrated Hudhayfa ibn Usayd Ghafari. Allah's messenger came to us all of a sudden as we were busy in a discussion. He asked, what are you discussing? The companion said, we are discussing about the last hour. Thereupon he said, it will not come until you see 10 signs. And in this connection, he made a mention of the smoke, Dajjal, the beast, the rising of the sun from the west, the descent of Jesus son of Mary, Gog and Magog, landslides in 3 places, one in the east, one in the west, and one in Arabia, at the end of which fire would burn forth from Yemen and would drive people to the place of their assembly. Sahih Muslim. In other words, when the barrier was brought down and Gog and Magog were released, that would be one of the major signs that mankind had entered into the last age. The question is, how would we know when the barrier was brought down and the release of Gog and Magog had commenced? Let us first examine the following. A hadith which answer that question, and which are all taken from Sahih Bukhari. The hadith is narrated by different people with slightly different texts. In consequence, the hadith is mutawatir, and that makes it the strongest possible hadith. Narrated Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, a hole has been opened in the dam of Gog and Magog. Wuhab, the sub-narrator, the number 90 with his index finger and thumb. Sahih Bukhari. Narrated Zainab bint Jahsh, that one day Allah's apostle entered upon her in a state of fear and said, none has the right to be worshipped but Allah. Woe to the Arabs from the great evil that has approached them. Today a hole has been opened in the dam of Gog and Magog like this. The Prophet made a circle with his index finger and thumb. Zainab bint Jahsh added, I said, O Allah's apostle, shall we be destroyed, though there will be righteous people among us? The Prophet said, yes, if the number of evil persons increased. Sahih Bukhari. The above hadith is repeated elsewhere in Sahih Bukhari, with slightly different texts. Narrated Ibn Abbas, Allah's apostle performed the tawaf around the Kaaba while riding his camel. And every time he reached the corner of the black stone, he pointed at it with his hand and said, Allahu Akbar. Zainab said, the Prophet said, an opening has been made in the wall of Gog and Magog like this, and this forming the number 90 with his thumb and index finger. Sahih Bukhari. The various ahadith of Sahih Bukhari that have come from 4 different sources, Abu Huraira, Zainab bint Jahsh, Salama, and Abdullah ibn Abbas are quite explicit in revealing that the release of Gog and Magog took place in the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Indeed, he even declared that the release took place today. Thus, the last age, or the age of fitan, commenced in the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is the explanation of his famous statement concerning his relationship with the last hour. Narrated Sahl bin Sa'd. I saw Allah's Messenger pointing with his index and middle fingers, saying, the time of my advent and the last hour are like these 2 fingers. The great catastrophe, the age of fitan, will overwhelm everything. Sahih Bukhari. The Quran went on to provide believers with a momentous sign by which they would not only have concrete evidence of the release of Gog and Magog, but, more than that, they would have the evidence that the world was now in the control of Gog and Magog. They would thus be able to identify Gog and Magog as the ruling power in the world. This is located in the reference to Gog and Magog in Surah Al-Anbiya.